very close to an energetic gate, which carries an astonishing energy of love and truth, which will no longer be denied on this planet.
Welcome back to True Reality TV, and this is the Inside LoveHasWon series. And now we are, okay, so I left off with just kind of this time period where mom's third eye has completely burst open. She's starting to see everything. Cryon comes in to help her, and he's helping to rewire her brain. He's helping her to kind of be guided through this process, and mom starts researching a lot of stuff. So she's researching, spirituality. She's reading these Cryon books. She researched Dolores Cannon, Donald Walsh, all that jazz, and the Celestine Prophecy. And as I said, she started getting a lot of downloads through like books and movies and shows and things like that. After 9/11 hit, and she realized the consciousness just hit 0 point, meaning 0 of like fear, pain and suffering. And so then around, a few years later, this is when she puts out the 911 call. She gets pregnant with her son, Aiden, who she credits as being one of the first responders to that 911 call. And I shared the story of just early on of, they had this very telepathic communication, and he was seeing all the same things mom was seeing. So he was confirming for her, like, you see this portal, you see this, you see that. And so one of the, as I said, his essence is the same as Elvis. And so he was always asking mom to play the song, The Impossible Dream, like over and over and over. And one day he points at mom and he says, "You will do the impossible dream." And she was like, "What?" And he was like, "You will do the impossible dream." And mom had just no idea what this meant, but it was activating something for her. Now, during the year 2005, this is where I would say mom officially kind of begins what would be her ultimate mission, okay, that she came here to accomplish. So in 2005, Rick had to go away for work, and at this time they're living out in rural Louisville, Kentucky. That was like the biggest tongue twister. And so he set mom up at the house. He bought her a laptop, because she's into the researching. And at this point, she's telling Rick all this stuff. She's like, she's starting to tell him about these downloads. And as I said, mom always knew everyone was God, right? But she was starting to tell Rick, like, I think something's going on. And like, I'm supposed to do this. And she was, starting to tell him about these downloads that she's getting of like God, and, that she's here to do something. And, Rick's just like, yeah, whatever. And mom told this story about how one time Rick comes home from work and they turn on the TV, and at that moment there's somebody on like the news or something, and they're like, God is here on the planet. And immediately Rick was like, what the fuck? And, just weird things like that would happen to mom. Another moment of like the song Slim Shady by Eminem has big core memories for mom. The Angels used to play her that song where it was like, will the real Slim Shady please stand up? And they would kind of play that song like for mom of like, will the real Slim Shady please stand up? And so one time, like, of course it took mom so many years. Like I said, this is at this point up into her like later 20s. Actually, she might have been 30 at this point, to even start to put these pieces together. So the angels and the galactics had to relentlessly kind of guide her with information. And also, this is at the point where, something Mom taught us was that, again, I talked about how she could only be in the present moment and to access information that was necessary for the present moment, but never beyond that. There was also something she taught us, which was, unless you ask your angels or the galactics a question, they are not just going to give you the answer. So she started to get this understanding that if she would ask the questions, she would get the answers. And so she'd always be like, you have to ask, because one time she asked the angels, like, why didn't you tell me that? And they were like, you didn't ask. And she's starting to document things. She's starting to write things down. She's starting to research. And so, they're always trying to keep giving her these hints and these clues. But again, this is taking Mom a long time to integrate. I mean, any of us would have, long ago, before that point in Mom's journey, just been like, I'm crazy, and not listen to any of it. And Mom was always following her guidance and her heart. And, she would just have these weird experiences. Like, she would open the laptop and all of a sudden, will the real Slim Shady please stand up is just playing on the laptop, and she can't figure out where it's coming from, and it's not pulled up anywhere. Like, these were just things that kept happening over and over and over, unexplainable things to try to get her to get it. These confirmations, these synchronistic events. Okay, so 2005, she's in rural Louisville, Kentucky. She's got a laptop. Rick's out of town. Her and Aiden are there. Okay, so Mom began researching. She began getting downloads and just receiving a massive amount of information at this time. This is when shit is flooding in for her. So she spent many moments in council with the galactics at this point. Saint Germain, she's connected with at this point. So he's in the picture. And so this was when Mom realized, this is when she got the download, that she had to build the web of light, which is the true unity consciousness that would overlay the World Wide Web. Because remember, around 2005, I mean, the internet had been around before then, but this is when it was getting big. It was getting very, very popular. Before that, it was like some people used it, some people didn't, right? Depended on if you had like a home computer or something like that. So the synchronicities began to mount. So the internet for Mom was a huge part of her journey. That was when it started in 2005, when she got the vision and was like, I need to build the web of light and overlay it on the World Wide Web, meaning this would be the unity consciousness. This would be where truth and light gets brought to the world. So one night she's watching The Wizard of Oz, okay, with Aiden, and the angels told her to keep a notebook while she's watching this movie. So throughout the entire movie, Mom is having body light ups and chills. This is another thing that started happening with her when she would watch certain movies, like when she watched the movie What Dreams May Come, Robin Williams. She got full body chills. She actually said that sometimes when she would watch a movie or a show that was giving her codes and downloads, her body would break out in hives. This was another thing that was interesting that started happening with her, was her body was physically responding to let her know when she was hearing truth. She would break out in hives, or she would get chills, what we call body light ups. That's just what us and Mom always called it. So Mom's like, what does this all mean, right? So during the commercial break, they're playing a trivia with the audience, and they ask, what is the meaning of the ruby slippers? So that was the trivia question. What was the meaning in the movie of the ruby slippers? And Mom's patiently waiting for the answer, okay, what are the angels are like, this is important. And the answer was for the trivia, the Holy Grail. And the angels immediately told Mom, you are the Holy Grail. And so many pieces of the puzzle start coming together. And this began a long string of events that would lead Mom ultimately on her 14-year mission. Now, as a fun fact, I wanted to share that in 2018, after most of our team joined Mom in the physical, the museum, which had the original like ruby slippers from the movie, they put out a statement saying that after 13 years, the original ruby slippers have been found. Apparently they were like stolen, I don't know. And coincidentally, that was about 13 years into Mom's mission. So just a fun fact, interesting, synchronistic. Most people will be like, whatever. Okay. So throughout her time with Aiden, the downloads were getting stronger and stronger. She's getting more and more information. Now, one day, her and Aiden go to Blockbuster, and that was kind of their jam, their little thing that they did. And he picks out 2 movies. One is The Muppets, classic, and one is Spider-Man. And so they get home, and Mom's like, okay, like, you know, which movie do you want to watch? And he's like, Spider-Man. So he's adamant. They're putting on Spider-Man. Okay. So during the movie, he looks at her and he yells, Mommy, you are Spider-Man. And she's like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, you're Spider-Man. So at this point, Mom's like kind of used to these like strange things happening. Because remember, she did ask for confirmations. That's what she needed at that time in her life. So she's just like rolling with it. She's like, okay, what does that mean? So she goes to her computer and she starts researching Spider-Man. Nothing's really coming up, obviously, other than the movie. So the angels are like, try searching for Spider-Woman. So she's like, okay. So she starts researching Spider-Woman. Lo and behold, she comes across the prophecies of the return of Spider-Woman, aka Great Spirit. This is one of the Hopi prophecies, and very tied to Native American legends as well. So Mom's whole body breaks out in chills. Okay, so she knows, oh shit, this is the truth. I just don't know what any of this means yet, right? And so at this point, things are getting strange. She's getting all this information. She's getting all these downloads, but she's like, what do I do with this? And like, what does this all mean? So at this point, there is a very profound experience that Mom has that kicked off the mission from here. And I want you to hear it in Mom's own words. So I'm going to play that now.
Robin is asking me to share the day that I was asked to come on mission. How it began is that I was putting Aiden down for his nap. He was about 2 or 3 months old in these moments, and Rick had gone off to Louisiana to help Katrina and the rebuild of all of that from that occurrence. He's a carpenter. Here I am on 1 acre land on like kind of a ranch style house with a dog and a new baby. Yay me. I was thrilled. Anyway. And I'm laying Aiden down, and all of a sudden Archangel Michael comes through the etheric realm. And he's like, it's time. I was like, what? It's time. Before I could ask him any questions, he just disappeared. I was like, fuck. All right. The fuck is it time for? It's time. Aiden was sleeping, nap, and I step outside the back porch, and I put my hand on my heart. And as soon as I did that, the sun started magnetizing towards my heart. And I said, I understand what time it is, what it's time for, but love, I surrender everything. And as soon as I said that, everything was like magnetized. The river of one appeared out of my third eye, and here we went. When the third eye opened and the river of one appeared, I was like, I looked at the angels. I'm like, what the fuck do I do with this? Jump into it. Yep, that's what I do. I jumped. As soon as I surrendered and jumped into the river, there's a lot of parables about this. You know, it's bumpy. You go like to the bottom, but then you rise to the top. Truth floats. Love floats. Love is real. And so I jumped, and as soon as I did that, events began to happen like wild. It's like, oh shit. I surrendered. I'm like, being like knocked around. Didn't understand. The angels came to me and said, you are the mother of all mothers. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? What does that mean? Who is that? I have no fucking clue what you're talking about. And then I got a vision of Adam and Eve making love in my third eye. And it began pulsating in my third eye until one day I had to pull over. I was driving in Dallas on the highway. I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Why won't this go away? And the angels were like, write it down. So I wrote it down and it went away because that's how truth is.
So, yeah. And another great teaching of Mom is, again, that ending there with her first like vision that like actually took over her whole vision was Adam and Eve making love. And like she said, it kept replaying until the point where it overtook her entire vision and she had to pull over. And that's when the angels were like, you have to write everything down. As soon as you write it down, it leaves, right? And this is also a big part of Mom's journey that she started with documentation. She documented this entire journey. Everything. Timestamps, journals, audios, videos, anything you can think of, it has been documented. And so, yeah, so after, Archangel Michael appears, and again, some of these things are a little bit out of order, but it's okay. But they all flow beautifully because it's all just little pieces of this part of Mom's life where she is figuring out that something's happening. And so part of that story of when Archangel Michael appears to her over Aiden's crib and says it's time, and then he leaves, and Rick at the time, who was downstairs and was coming up to the apartment, he saw a man through the window. And so he raced upstairs and kind of confronted Mom and was like, where is he? Like thinking that there's like a man that she has in there. And Mom's like, who? And he's like, I saw a man. And she goes, oh, that's our Archangel Michael. And of course, he searches the apartment. There's nobody there. Just another experience that Mom had where someone else actually did confirm it, which was wild. And so shortly, somewhere after this, there's probably other pieces in here, but we get to 2006. Okay, so this was all in like 2005. And in 2006, the angels pull Mom into council one day. And they say, you have to begin your mission. And mom is like, okay, what do you mean? And they tell her, you have to go to Philadelphia. And immediately mom's like, no, I'm not leaving my son. I'm not going to Philadelphia. No. And she said for hours, like 6 hours, she's arguing with the angels and with the galactics at that time that she was not going to do that. And they said, you're going. This is what you have to do. Okay, so this was very, I think, very traumatic for mom because, again, a lot of people don't understand her journey. But she was so connected. And everything she did was for the greater good and was for the completion of her mission and her contract. And truly, only someone without the mind could do what she did. Truly. To listen to angelic guidance at all costs, no matter what your human self wants or doesn't want, that's a very rare thing. And nobody in the ego programmed mind, this is why nobody in the ego could have done this. Nobody, because none of y'all would have done it. None of y'all would have listened to your angels, your higher self, or the galactics telling you, you've got to go through all these pain and suffering experiences. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And you're just agreeing to it. That would never happen. Ever. Because the ego wants to be comfortable. And the ego has wants, needs, and desires. And the ego is only caring about itself. It is not caring about the greater good. It is not caring about humanity. It's not caring about ascension. She was the only one who could do this. And so after a long period of time of arguing, of being very upset that she is being told that this is what she has to do, she finally agrees. So she has a friend, Ed, okay, who agrees to take her to Philly. And so Ed drives mom all the way from Louisville to Philly. Now mom is completely distraught. Obviously Rick has no understanding of what's going on here and what is happening. And of course mom doesn't really know either. She's just following the guidance. And when they arrive in Philly, she stays with Ed. She said he was somewhat spiritual, a little bit, but it was someone mom needed for support and I think played the role he needed to play at that time. So mom was still unsure of what she was there to do, okay? So at this point, the angels guide mom to spend the first 3 months in Philly. They guide her to go walking around this track. I don't know exactly where it is. If you guys live there, though, maybe it's like Liberty Park or something like that. But it's this big track, like a running track. And so for the first 3 months of her being there, she is simply guided to walk that track for up to 16 hours a day. She was just walking the track and she's just crying. She's crying the entire time. And the angels come in and inform her that mom was there to transform unworthiness for the planet, that they've identified this far that unworthiness is one of the deepest ego energetics of the planet. So mom is just walking this track for like 14, 15, 16 hours a day, crying. She said people definitely thought she was out of her skull. And she's transforming unworthiness for the planet. And that she would be the first to break through this. And so she walked, she cried, and she said she just felt every ounce of unworthiness and pain that humanity had ever felt. And finally, after 3 months, the angels told her she transformed it, she completed it, and she was now kind of on to her next part of being there in Philadelphia. So, during her times in Texas, like I said, she was always at the karaoke bars. She was the star of the show. She was the party starter. And so her voice, her energy, her frequency, it brought people. It drew people of all spectrums, right? The dark was always attracted, but other people were too. Now, Mom entered this bar in Philly, and she said it was pretty quiet. There was not many people there, but it was a pretty large space. And so Mom talked to the owners, and she was like, I think we could get this place filled. Like, we could get this bumping, And so soon enough, Mom's running the bar. And she's just blowing people away. So she's managing the bar. This was a fun part that she also, wanted to master. She loved managing. She loved, again, bringing her stores from F to A, right? Like this was the cream of her crop. This was her specialty. And so she's hosting, she's pulling in a crowd, and within just a few months, this bar was packed and people were coming from all over. And so Mom saw the power of her energy and what it could produce. And so this was, again, very similar with McDonald's, where she did see how this was manifesting. She started to see the power of the energy. However, it was in Philly where Mom first began to realize that energy was watching her. And I know people are going to think this is crazy, and that's fine. Who cares? Why not and who cares, as Mom would say. So Mom recalled seeing snipers in the bushes as she would walk home. And again, whether this was physical, etheric, energetic, don't know, don't care. But she saw the energy, and she was being watched, and she could feel it, and she could sense it, and she could see it. So this sense of eeriness and danger was kind of very much present. This, started again back in Texas with her son Cole, when someone broke into her apartment and threatened her at knife point. It was like she knew that this energy was going to continue. And, the best way that I can describe this is from the movie Inception. So in that movie, the dreamer or the creator of the dream would be able to navigate through, right? If you've seen that movie. If someone, however, was appearing in another's dream, right? Like in that scene where the young architect girl is with Leonardo and they go into the dream, right? And she's creating the dream. Or it's his dream, but she starts changing things, remember? And so at that point, all of the non-playable characters in the dream would begin to turn on the imposter, right? Remember in that scene, they all start turning on her. And he's like, you're changing things too quickly. And they can sense that. So they're now like turning on you. That's it. That's exactly how it works. So this is the same concept here. So the matrix was unconsciously co-created by us through the manipulation of the dark, obviously, and the ego-programmed mind. We unconsciously created the matrix. So this is their dream. This is the ego's dream. This is the dark's dream, the illusion. Now, when one wakes up within the false dream and begins anchoring in their power, we have the ability to change the dream. You following me? Now, Mom was the first to experience this, to see it happening in front of her. That when you start changing reality, the Agent Smiths or the unconscious ones all of a sudden are looking to who's doing that? Who's changing my illusion? And that's when she started to, oh shit. So she had to be very careful. Now, during Mom's time in Philly, she began getting downloads for her mission. she didn't even know yet that she was going to actually, she had no idea at this point that she was going to be on a 14-year mission at all. But she starts getting downloads about what she's here to do. And so her first idea was to begin this movement, and she had coined it the Great Human Potential Movement. And again, her idea was the great human potential, to bring everyone into their highest potential, to their grandest selves, and to bring heaven onto earth. So the Great Human Potential Movement was the first idea that Mom has. Now, she saw the potential of the human spirit and that we could truly embody God. And so she remembered sharing with Ed her ideas, right? And one day she's telling him about this idea, the Great Human Potential Movement. And Ed looks at her and he says, "What if you're wrong about all of this?" And she looked at him dead in the eyes and said, "What if I'm fucking right?" And that was it. And that's one of my favorite stories about Mom, because that's just who she was. You know, I think we all have dreams and we all have visions of what we could bring to the world and how we can move into such a greater society and way of living and treating each other, and the dreams we all have. And most people, tell us, "Oh, you're crazy. What if you're wrong? What if that never happens? That's never going to happen. That's a fantasy." Well, what if we're right? And that's what Mom believed. She said, "What if I am right? What then?" And at that point, she goes home from Philly. And her destiny was kind of sealed at this point. So obviously she goes home. She picks up Aiden from school. He's upset with her for leaving, understandably. But she rehearted him, and this is from Mom's recollection, that she said, "Aiden, you're the one that told me that I'm here to do the impossible dream, that, I have this mission." And he was like, "Yeah, you're right. You're right." And so at this point, she, over the next 6 months to a year, Mom starts getting more downloads, okay? So she spent months researching, documenting. She starts collaborating with other light workers and things like that. And so she starts getting more of what is coming. She's trying to figure it all out. Now, bear in heart that at this time, Mom is also, she's about to be an owner-operator of a Sonic store. So, she was about to be an owner-operator and be running her own store. I mean, she's been in this business now for 15 years. She was a star supervisor of McDonald's. At one point, she even went over to Wendy's because McDonald's wasn't gonna give her a pay raise, and Wendy's wanted her, and then there was this kind of bidding war for her. She's been around the block. She's been very successful at what she does, and that was kind of the next phase of her journey. And so she was still kind of going along with that, that was what she was gonna do, right? And Mom starts downloading the blueprints for the mission. Again, she doesn't know where this is headed, but this is what is coming to her. So she's channeling through the blueprints for the First Contact Ground Crew team, for the New Earth Transitionary Government, for the Ascension protocols. And at this point, she is connecting to Father God. Okay, so at this point, she knows we're all God, but she, like everybody else, is connecting to Father God. So she starts kind of not channeling him, but she's connecting to the Father energy, and she is getting information and getting downloads, right? So one day the angels finally tell her, you're God, right? And Mom's like, yeah, like we're all God. And they're like, no, but you're like the God, right? And Mom's like, I don't know what to do with this information. So she just like writes it down and lets it go. This is pretty much like the story of Mom's life. If she was always getting information that just like blew her brain, and she's like, I'm just going to write this down and then let it go, because I don't know. Because she could just not like fathom what was going on. So slowly she's getting the pieces of the puzzle. She's channeling, connecting to Father God, right? And he's giving her all of this information. And so there's a lot during this time. Okay, like Mom she kind of had begun her mission in Philly. She was getting these downloads, and now she's really moving into like some very expansive information. She's downloading the Ascension protocols. She's getting the blueprint for the New Earth transitionary government. At one point, she was going to run for president. The angel's like, you're going to run for president. And, you know, she was just getting through all this stuff, and she's documenting the whole thing. And so that's a lot in 2006 and early 2007. And so 2007 is like this pivotal moment that we're going to get into in the next chapter. But this is a lot to digest at this point. And so Mom is she's channeling, she's documenting, she's awaiting what's coming. She's awaiting what this all means for her. And this is when the official planetary ascension begins. This is when the official mission begins. So we're going to walk through all that, but this is a super pivotal time in Mom's life. And so we're going to have to go slowly through a lot of these things because there's a lot to this. But yeah, this was the moment. This was the moment where Mom had to jump completely into the unknown and begin her mission that she had been working 30-something years to finally start. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you on the next episode.
We are very close to an energetic gate which carries an astonishing energy of love and truth, which will no longer be denied on this planet.